The sticker on the back of the folding metal chair was peeling. It was a cheap neon orange rectangle that stood out violently against the muted champagne and blush tones of the rest of the ballroom, and on it, someone had scrawled "vendor staff" in hasty black marker. I stared at that sticker for a long time, my fingers clutching the strap of my sensible leather purse, trying to understand how a mother ends up sitting in a chair meant for hired help at her own son's wedding. The chair wasn't tucked into a corner, it was practically in another zip code. It was wedged behind a massive decorative plaster pillar wrapped in faux ivy, positioned exactly 3 feet from the heavy swinging doors of the catering kitchen. Every time a waiter burst through with a tray of appetizers, a gust of air smelling of garlic, dish soap, and frantic sweating hit me in the face. I looked out from behind my pillar. Far away, across a sea of Italian silk tablecloths and crystal centerpieces that cost more than my first car, sat the head table. It was elevated on a platform, bathed in soft golden light. My son Daniel sat there. He looked like a prince in his custom-tailored tuxedo, his dark hair gelled to perfection, his smile tight and practiced. Next to him was Isabella, his new wife. She was undeniably beautiful, a vision in lace and pearls, but her beauty was sharp, like a diamond that could cut glass. She was laughing at something her mother, Victoria, whispered in her ear, her head thrown back, her neck long and white. They looked like royalty. And me? I was the peasant in the shadows, hidden away so I wouldn't ruin the view. My name is Beatrice Moretti. I'm 64 years old. Most people look at me, at my rough red hands, my sturdy shoes, and my off-the-rack department store dress, and they see a simple woman. They see a grandmother who knits, a widow who lives in a row house in Queens, a nobody. They don't know that these rough hands built an empire. They don't know that Moretti's Bakery, the name stamped on the cardboard coffee cups held by half the population of Manhattan every morning, was built on the sweat of my brow. They don't know that 3 years ago, I sold that empire to a multinational conglomerate for $45 million. I never told Daniel. I never told anyone. I put the money in a trust, invested it quietly, and continued to live in my row house, driving my 2015 Honda Accord. Why? Because I wanted Daniel to make his own way. I wanted him to have the hunger I had, the drive that wakes you up at 3 a.m. to knead dough until your shoulders burn. I didn't want him to be a trust fund baby. I wanted him to be a man, sitting there in the drafty air of the kitchen door, watching him ignore my existence. I realized that maybe I had made a terrible mistake. Maybe the hunger I tried to teach him had been replaced by a different kind of hunger. A hunger for status, for validation, for a life that looked perfect on Instagram, but was rotten at the core. The humiliation had started long before I found my seat behind the pillar. It had started the moment I pulled my Honda into the crushed gravel driveway of the Gilded Willow, the historic Hudson Valley estate Isabella had demanded for the venue. I arrived 20 minutes early, my nerves fluttering in my stomach like trapped birds. I had driven 2 hours from Queens, navigating the winding country roads, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror every few miles. I had splurged on a blowout for my hair, and I was wearing a navy blue dress that the salesgirl at Macy's said brought out my eyes. It wasn't designer, but it was elegant. It was respectable. As I approached the valet stand, I saw the line of cars ahead of me. A Bentley, a Porsche, a vintage Rolls-Royce. My sensible gray sedan looked like a dinghy floating in a marina of yachts. The valet, a young man with a headset, looked at my car with open confusion. He didn't open my door. He just waved me forward as if assuming I was a delivery driver lost, on the way to the service entrance. I parked the car myself. I walked up the grand stone steps, smoothing the front of my dress. The air smelled of expensive perfume and old money. The Sterlings, Isabella's family, were greeting guests in the foyer. Victoria Sterling, the mother of the bride, stood front and center. She was a woman who wore her wealth like armor, stiff, shiny, and impenetrable. She was wearing a silver gown that looked like liquid mercury, and her face was pulled so tight by surgeries that she looked perpetually surprised. I walked up to her, smiling, holding out my hand. "Victoria," I said warmly, "it's so lovely to be here. The estate is breathtaking." Victoria looked at my hand, then at my face. For a second, her eyes were blank, as if her brain refused to register my presence. Then a flicker of recognition and disappointment crossed her features. "Oh," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Beatrice, you decided to drive yourself? We assumed you would take the shuttle from the hotel." "I wanted to be here early," I said, dropping my hand since she clearly wasn't going to shake it. To help with anything Daniel might need. Victoria let out a short, sharp laugh. Help? Oh, Beatrice, dear, we have staff for that. Please don't try to touch anything. The floral arrangements are extremely delicate. Imported from Holland, you know. She leaned in closer, her eyes scanning my dress. And is that polyester? I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. It's a blend, I said quietly. How practical, Victoria said, dismissing me with a wave of her manicured hand. Well, the coat check is to the left. Try not to linger in the foyer, darling. We're trying to keep the entrance clear for the Vogue photographer. She turned her back on me to greet a man in a tuxedo who looked like a senator. I was dismissed. Just like that. I stood there for a moment, feeling small, feeling like the flower-dusted girl from Queens who didn't belong in the castle. But I swallowed the lump in my throat. I wasn't here for Victoria. I was here for Daniel. I walked into the main ballroom. It was a cathedral of excess. The ceilings were draped in white silk, hundreds of candles floated in glass orbs, and a string quartet played music that sounded like money. I scanned the room, looking for my son. I found him near the bar, talking to a group of men in suits. He looked handsome. He looked successful. He looked terrified. He was sweating, shifting his weight from foot to foot, laughing too loudly at jokes that probably weren't funny. I started to walk toward him, my heart swelling with maternal pride despite everything. Daniel, I called out softly. He turned. His eyes met mine. For a split second I saw relief. I saw the little boy who used to run to me when he scraped his knee, but then he looked over my shoulder. He saw Isabella watching him from across the room. Her eyes narrowed. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. The relief in Daniel's eyes vanished, replaced by panic. He turned back to the men, pretending he hadn't heard me. He turned his back on his own mother. I stopped walking. It felt like a physical blow to the chest. My son, the boy I had raised alone after his father died, the boy I had saved every penny for, was ashamed of me. I stood there, stranded in the middle of the dance floor, until a wedding planner with a clipboard appeared at my elbow. She was a young woman, frazzled and brisk, wearing a headset. Name? She barked, not looking up. Beatrice Moretti, I said. I'm the groom's mother. The woman paused. She ran her finger down the list. She flipped the page. She frowned. Finally, she found it. Ah, right. Moretti. Follow me. She didn't lead me to the front tables. She didn't lead me to the family section where Victoria and her husband were holding court. She walked me past the stage, past the dance floor, past the dessert station, all the way to the back of the room. We walked behind a massive pillar wrapped in ivy. There, wedged into a dark alcove next to the kitchen doors, was a folding table. Here you go, she said, placing a generic place card on the table. Table 32? There must be a mistake, I said, my voice trembling. This is behind a pillar. I can't see the stage. I can't see my son. The woman sighed, tapping her pen against the clipboard. No mistake, ma'am. The bride was very specific about the seating chart. She said you preferred a quiet location, away from the noise. A quiet location, away from the noise. It was code for out of sight. Is there anyone else sitting here? I asked, looking at the 3 other empty chairs. The photographer and the DJ take their breaks here, she said. Enjoy your evening. She walked away, leaving me standing in the shadows. I looked at the peeling sticker on the chair. Vendor, staff. I sat down. The chair wobbled. The metal was cold against my back. I clutched my purse tighter. Inside that purse was a white envelope. Inside that envelope was a cashier's check for $500,000. It was supposed to be a surprise, a wedding gift. A down payment on a house in Westchester so they wouldn't have to rent. I had planned to give it to Daniel quietly, maybe during a private moment before the cake cutting. I wanted to see the stress melt from his face. I wanted to tell him, I know you're struggling, baby. I know the real estate market is hard. Mom is here. Mom has your back. Now, sitting in the draft of the kitchen door, listening to the dishwashers shout at each other in Spanish just a few feet away, the envelope felt heavy. It felt like lead. Have you ever felt the exact moment your heart hardens? It's not a loud crack. It's a quiet cooling, like lava turning to stone. I watched the reception unfold from my exile. I watched Victoria and Isabella's father give toasts, talking about legacy and pedigree, and the union of 2 great dynasties. They didn't mention me. They didn't mention that Daniel's father was a hard-working mechanic who died when Daniel was 4. They didn't mention that I had put Daniel through college and grad school without taking a single loan. They acted as if Daniel had sprung fully formed from the earth, a suitable accessory for their daughter. An hour passed. The other chairs at my table remained empty. I sat alone, sipping a glass of lukewarm water, watching the servers march past me with trays of filet mignon and lobster tail. They served table 1, table 2, table 3. They served the distant cousins at table 15. They served the college friends at table 20. Finally, a waiter approached my table. He was a young kid, maybe 20, with acne scars and a tie that was too loose. He looked exhausted. He wasn't carrying a silver tray. He was carrying a cardboard box. He placed it in front of me. It was a white box, the kind you get a cheap lunch in at a corporate conference. On top, a sticker read, "Vendor Meal, Chicken Sandwich." I looked at the box. I looked at the waiter. "I think there's a mistake," I said gently. "I'm having the filet. I sent in my RSVP card months ago." The waiter looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight, glancing toward the head table. "I'm sorry, ma'am." The kitchen manager said, "Well, the list says table 32 gets the vendor boxes. The filet count was strict. There aren't any extras." "I see," I whispered. It's a pretty good sandwich," he offered weakly. "It has pesto." "Thank you," I said. "It's fine." He scurried away. Relieved to escape the awkwardness, I sat there staring at the white box. Inside, I could smell the cold bread and the wilted lettuce. Across the room, under the warm glow of the chandeliers, Daniel was cutting into a thick steak. Isabella was laughing, feeding him a bite of lobster. They were feasting. I was being fed scraps. It wasn't about the food. I have eaten worse things than a cold chicken sandwich. I have eaten stale bread so my son could have fresh fruit. I have eaten cereal for dinner for a week straight so I could pay for his braces. It wasn't the hunger, it was the disrespect. It was the calculated cruelty of it. Isabella hadn't just forgotten me. She had planned this. She had looked at the spreadsheet, seen mother of the groom, and moved me to the help column. And Daniel, my Daniel, he had let her. I reached for the box. My hand shook just a little. I opened it. Inside lay a sad focaccia sandwich wrapped in plastic, a bag of potato chips, and a bruised apple. I didn't cry. I wanted to. I felt the tears pricking the back of my eyes, hot and stinging. But I refused to let them fall. I refused to give Victoria Sterling the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I unwrapped the sandwich. I took a bite. The bread was dry, the chicken was rubbery. I chewed slowly, forcing myself to swallow. Suddenly, the chair next to me scraped back. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up. It was the photographer, a man in his 40s with a scruffy beard, 2 heavy cameras strapped to his chest, and sweat soaking through his black dress shirt. He looked like he had run a marathon. "Please," I said, gesturing to the chair. "Sit." He collapsed into the chair with a groan. "God, my feet are killing me. These people are brutal. The bride yelled at me because the sun set too fast. Like I control the rotation of the earth." He opened his own white box and tore into the chips like a starving man. He looked at me, really looked at me, noticing my dress, my age. "You're not a vendor," he said, chewing. "Who are you? Aunt? Great aunt?" "I'm Beatrice," I said. "I'm the groom's mother." The photographer stopped chewing. He froze. A chip fell from his hand onto the table. He looked at me, then at the table number, then at the kitchen door swinging open and shut. You're Daniel's mom?" he whispered. "Yes." "And you're sitting here?" "Apparently I prefer the quiet," I said, repeating the lie I had been fed. The photographer's face darkened. He put down his sandwich. He looked angry. Not at me, but for me. He started, then shook his head. "That's messed up. I've shot 400 weddings, lady. I've seen fights, I've seen drunk uncles, I've seen runaway brides, but I have never, ever seen the groom's mom put at the vendor table." "It's complicated," I said. "It's not complicated," a new voice chimed in. I turned. The DJ had joined us. He was a younger guy, wearing a fedora and a vest. He sat in the third chair, sliding his headphones around his neck. He looked equally exhausted. "It's broke," the DJ said. "That's what it is." "Sam, shut up," the photographer warned. "No, look at her," Sam the DJ said, gesturing to me. "She's sitting with us. She's one of us now. She deserves to know." "Know what?" I asked, putting down my sandwich. The air at the table shifted. It wasn't just tired workers complaining anymore. It was conspiratorial. It was heavy. Sam leaned in, lowering his voice so the passing waiters couldn't hear. This whole thing? He gestured to the ballroom, the flowers, the champagne tower. It's a scam, a house of cards. They haven't paid us. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? The final deposits, the photographer, Leo, his badge said, explained quietly. They were due 48 hours ago. Checks haven't cleared. The credit cards were declined, all of them. Why are you here then? I asked. Because the groom, your son, begged us, Leo said. He called me yesterday, practically crying. He said he had a cash infusion coming tonight. He said his mother, that's you, was bringing a check for $500,000 that would cover everything. I felt the blood drain from my face. The envelope in my purse seemed to pulse against my side. He told us, Sam continued, that if we just showed up and did the job, he'd pay us double tomorrow morning. He said, my mom is loaded. She just doesn't like wire transfers. She's bringing a check. He promised us double, Leo said, looking at his camera. And honestly, I need the money. My kid needs braces, so I gambled. But looking at you sitting here, eating a boxed sandwich. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The implication hung in the air like smoke. If they treat the money source like this, what are the odds we're getting paid? I sat back in my wobbly metal chair, the pieces of the puzzle slammed together. The salary Daniel claimed he made as a developer? It was the monthly allowance I sent him, filtered through a fake LLC he set up. The successful deals he bragged about? Lies. He was broke. The Sterlings were broke. They weren't just humiliated by me, they were banking on me. Daniel hadn't seated me at table 32 because he was ashamed. He seated me there because he thought I was a fool. He thought I was a simple, stupid old woman who would hand over a check for $500,000 just for the privilege of being in the room. He thought he could hide me behind a pillar, take my money, and then send me back to Queens while he played the big shot. A cold fury began to rise in my chest. It wasn't the hot, tearful hurt I had felt earlier. It was the cold, calculating precision of a woman who knows how to run a business. I had fired suppliers for less dishonesty than this. I had sued competitors for less theft than this. I looked at Leo. I looked at Sam. These men were working on their feet for 10 hours, hungry and tired, fueled by a lie my son had told them. They were the ones who deserved respect. Not Victoria with her facelift. Not Isabella with her sneer. Not Daniel with his spine of jelly. Leo, I said, my voice steady and calm. Sam, eat your sandwiches. Ma'am, Sam asked. Eat up, I said, so you're going to need your energy. For what? Leo asked. I reached into my purse. I didn't pull out the envelope. I pulled out my lipstick. I applied a fresh coat of red, the color of war. Because, I said, snapping the lipstick shut, the speeches are starting soon, and I think I'd like to say a few words. Sam's eyes widened. You're not on the list, Beatrice. The planner will kill me if I give you the mic. Sam, I said, leaning in, if you give me that microphone, I promise you, you will get paid tonight, and you will get paid double. Sam looked at Leo. Leo looked at Sam. A slow grin spread across the photographer's face. Give her the mic, Sam, Leo said. I want to take pictures of this. I turned back to the room. From behind my pillar, I could see Daniel standing up to hug his new father-in-law. He looked relieved. He thought the hard part was over. He thought the money was in the bag. He had no idea that the bank was about to close. Permanently. Sam, I asked, smoothing the napkin on my lap. When is the mother-son dance scheduled? They cut it, Sam said gently. Isabella said it would mess up the pacing. Of course she did. That's fine, I said, Then we'll go straight to the toast. I took another bite of my dry chicken sandwich. It tasted like justice. The view from table 32 was about to change everything. The sandwich tasted like sawdust, but I ate every bite. I folded the wax paper wrapper into a neat little square and tucked it back into the box. Beside me, Leo checked the display on his camera, scrolling through hundreds of photos of people who hadn't paid him. Sam tapped his foot nervously, his eyes darting between me and the wedding planner who was prowling the perimeter of the room like a prison warden. You sure about this, Beatrice? Sam whispered. The planner, Elena. She's terrifying. She has a headset and she's not afraid to use it. I'm sure, I said. My voice was calm, but inside a storm was brewing. Tell me about the caterers. Have they been paid? Sam shook his head. Nope. Maria, the head of catering, she's back there right now pacing. She told me if she doesn't see a check by 10 p.m., she's pulling the late-night snack service and filing a police report for theft of services. It's bad, Beatrice. It's really bad. I nodded. It wasn't just a lie. It was a Ponzi scheme built on wedding cake and hydrangeas. My son had defrauded working people. He had looked these vendors in the eye, people who worked just as hard as I did, and lied to them, using my name as collateral. That hurt more than the table assignment. That was a stain on the Moretti soul. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I need to use the ladies' room. Good luck, Leo muttered. Watch out for the bride. She's on the warpath. I walked along the edge of the room, keeping to the shadows. I saw Daniel standing near the bar. He wasn't drinking, he was watching the door. Watching for me? No, watching for my purse. He checked his watch, wiped sweat from his forehead, and forced a smile for a guest who slapped him on the back. He looked like a man standing on a trapdoor. I made my way to the hallway where the restrooms were located. It was a long corridor lined with antique mirrors and velvet wallpaper. As I washed my hands in the marble sink, I looked at myself. 64 years old. Gray hair pulled back in a bun. A dress that Victoria Sterling called polyester trash. But my eyes were clear. My father used to say I had baker's eyes. Eyes that could spot a mistake in the dough from across the room. Right now, I saw the biggest mistake of my life. I dried my hands and stepped back out into the hallway. Voices drifted around the corner, high, sharp voices. I cannot believe she actually wore that dress. It looks like a sack. It was Isabella. Hush, darling, Victoria's voice replied. It doesn't matter what she wears. It matters what she brought. Did Daniel get the envelope yet? I froze. I pressed myself against the wall, hidden by a large potted fern. Not yet, Isabella hissed. He's too chicken to ask her for it directly. He says he's waiting for the right moment. God, he's so useless sometimes. He's not useless. He's an investment, Victoria corrected sharply. And investments require patience. Once we have that check, we pay off your father's gambling debt, we pay the venue, and we have enough left over to lease the penthouse for a year. We just need to secure the bag. My breath caught in my throat. Gambling debt. The Sterlings weren't just snobs. They were broke too. 2 drowning families clutching at each other, trying to use me as a life raft. I just hate looking at her, Isabella complained. Sitting there at the vendor table, it's embarrassing. Did you see her eating the boxed lunch? She actually ate it, like an animal. Who does that? Someone who has never tasted caviar. Victoria scoffed. Look, suffer through tonight. Smile at the peasant. Once the check clears tomorrow morning, you never have to see her again. We'll do Thanksgiving in Aspen. We'll tell Daniel his mother isn't invited because the altitude is bad for her heart or something. He'll believe it. He believes anything you tell him. He really does, Isabella giggled. He thinks I'm 24. He thinks my dad owns the yacht club. It's pathetic, really, but he's pretty. And once his mom dies, we get the rest of the bakery money, right? Every penny, Victoria said. Now, fix your lipstick. You have to look grateful when she hands over the check. They walked away, their heels clicking on the marble floor. I stood there for a long time. The hallway was silent, but my head was screaming. Pathetic, useless, investment, peasant. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the envelope. I tore it open. The check lay there, blue security paper, my signature in neat cursive, the amount $500,000. I had worked 10 years for that money. I had missed Daniel's soccer games to earn that money. I had burned my arms on industrial ovens for that money, and they were betting on my death. I walked back to the ballroom. I didn't stick to the shadows this time. I walked straight down the center aisle. I felt taller. I felt lighter. I returned to table 32. Sam looked up, concerned. You okay, Beatrice? You look intense. I'm fine, Sam, I said, sitting down. What time are the toasts? 5 minutes. The best man is up first, then the maid of honor, then the father of the bride. The groom usually speaks last. And the mother of the groom? I asked. Not on the schedule, Sam reminded me. Like I said. Put me on the schedule, I said. After the father of the bride, before Daniel. Elena will fire me, Sam hissed. If you don't, I said, looking him dead in the eye, Daniel is going to bounce the check he gives you tonight, I guarantee it. But if you give me that mic, I will write you a personal check for your full fee plus $2,000 right now." Sam stared at me. He looked at the frantic catering manager arguing with a waiter in the corner. He looked at his worn-out sneakers. "2,000 tip?" he whispered. "Cashable tomorrow," I said. "I bank at Chase. It clears instantly." Sam took a deep breath. He adjusted his fedora. "Screw it. Elena hates me anyway. You're on, Beatrice." The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the head table. The best man, a frat brother of Daniel's named Chad, stumbled to the microphone. He was drunk. He rambled about a trip to Vegas and how Daniel scored big with Isabella. It was crude and empty. Then the maid of honor spoke. She talked about Isabella's style and grace for 5 minutes. She didn't mention Daniel once. Then Victoria's husband, Richard Sterling, took the mic. He was a bloated man with a red face. "To the union of two great families," he boomed, swaying slightly. "The Sterlings have a history in this valley that goes back 100 years. And the Morettis, well, they make excellent bread." A ripple of polite laughter went through the room, a dig, a subtle public reminder of my place. "We welcome Daniel," Richard continued. "He's a young man with potential and resources to the future." He raised his glass. Everyone drank. Daniel looked pale. He was tapping his foot. He caught my eye from across the room. He made a subtle gesture, rubbing his fingers together. "The money." "Where is the money?" I smiled at him. A cold, baker's smile. Sam, the DJ, stepped up to the microphone stand. He looked nervous. He glanced at the wedding planner, who was frantically waving her arms at him from the side of the stage to cut to the cake cutting. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sam said, his voice booming over the speakers, "we have a special surprise addition to the toast lineup. Please welcome the groom's mother, Beatrice Moretti." The room went deadly silent. Isabella's head snapped toward the DJ booth. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed Daniel's arm, her nails digging into his tuxedo jacket. What is she doing? I could see her mouth the words. Daniel looked confused. He stood up halfway, then sat back down. He looked at me. He looked hopeful. "Maybe she's doing it publicly," his eyes said. "Maybe she wants the credit. Let her speak." I stood up from table 32. I smoothed my polyester blend dress. I picked up my purse. I walked past the pillar. I walked past the kitchen doors. I walked past the tables of the wealthy, the influential, the beautiful people who had ignored me all night. I climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The spotlight hit me. It was hot. It blinded me for a second, but then I adjusted. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Victoria Sterling clutching her pearls. I saw Isabella fuming. I saw Daniel sweating. I took the microphone from the stand. It was heavy like a rolling pin. "Good evening," I said. My voice didn't shake. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Beatrice, Daniel's mother, or, as I was referred to tonight by the seating chart, the lady at table 32. A few nervous titters rippled through the crowd. They thought it was a joke. "Table 32 is an interesting place," I continued. "It's back there by the kitchen. You can't see the bride and groom from there, but you can see the staff. You can see the waiters sweating to get your steaks out while they eat cold sandwiches. You can see the photographer changing his batteries so he doesn't miss a moment of a wedding he hasn't been paid for yet." The silence in the room changed. It went from confused to tense. "I had dinner with the staff tonight," I said, "and I learned a lot. I learned that loyalty is rare. I learned that hard work is often invisible, and I learned that my son Daniel has been making promises he can't keep." Daniel stood up. "Mom," he said, his voice tight. "Mom, sit down. You're tired." "Sit down, Daniel," I said. It wasn't a request. It was the voice I used when he was 10 and broke a window. "I have the floor." Daniel sat. He looked terrified. "You see," I said to the crowd, "there is a misunderstanding about the Moretti family. The Sterlings seem to think we are a bank. They seem to think that because I sell bread, I am simple. That I am a peasant, I believe that was the word used in the hallway earlier." Victoria Sterling gasped. Her face went ashen. "But bread has fed civilizations," I said. "And this peasant, well, she built a company. Moretti's Bakery. You might know it. I started it in a kitchen smaller than Isabella's closet, and 3 years ago, I sold it." I paused. I let the words hang there. "I sold it for $45 million. The gasp that went through the room sucked the air out of the ballroom. A fork clattered onto a plate. Isabella's jaw literally dropped. Daniel looked like he had been struck by lightning. 45 million? Daniel whispered. Yes, I said. I kept it a secret. Because I wanted you to build your own life, Daniel. I wanted you to find a woman who loved you, not the zeros in my bank account. I wanted to see if you could stand on your own 2 feet. I looked at him with pity. But you didn't stand, Daniel. You knelt. You knelt to people who despise you. You knelt to people who call your mother trash and put her by the kitchen door. You lied to these workers. You defrauded them. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the check. This is the check Daniel was waiting for, I said, holding it up. $500,000. The bailout fund. The money to pay off the gambling debts and the venue and the penthouse. Isabella reached out, her hand trembling. Zinnia, Beatrice, wait. Ripe. I tore the check in half, then in quarters. The sound was amplified by the microphone. It sounded like a gunshot. The Bank of Mom is closed, I said, permanently. Isabella let out a scream, a real, primal scream of financial ruin. However, I said, I am a Moretti, and Morettis pay their debts, even the ones they didn't incur. I pulled out my checkbook and a pen. Leo, the photographer, Sam, the DJ, Maria, the catering manager, please come to the stage. They hesitated. Then slowly they walked up. They looked shocked. How much does he owe you? I asked Maria. 30,000 for the food, she whispered, and 5 for the staff overtime. I wrote a check. I tore it out. Here is 40,000, I said. Share the extra with the servers who gave me the sandwich. It was dry, but the service was honest. I wrote a check for Leo. Here is 10,000. Release the photos to me, not them. I want a record of the day my son learned a lesson. I wrote a check for Sam. And here is yours. Thank you for the microphone. I handed out the checks. The staff looked at them, stunned. They looked at me like I was Santa Claus. I put the checkbook back in my purse. To the Sterlings, I said, turning to the head table. You wanted a merger? You got one. You are now merged with a broke real estate agent. Good luck with the gambling debts, Richard. I hear kneecaps are expensive to replace. I looked at Daniel one last time. He was crying. Silent, shaking tears. I love you, Daniel, I said softly. But I love you too much to fund your destruction. Call me when you're ready to work for a living. I might know a bakery that's hiring. I dropped the microphone. Thump. I walked down the stairs. The room parted for me like the Red Sea. No one said a word. The only sound was the sobbing of the bride and the scratching of a pen as Leo endorsed his check. I walked past table 32. I winked at the empty chair. I walked out the double doors into the cool night air of the Hudson Valley. My Honda was waiting for me. It wasn't a Bentley, it wasn't a Rolls-Royce, but it was paid for, and it was taking me home. The drive back to Queens took 2 hours, but it felt like 2 lifetimes. My hands gripped the steering wheel of the Honda at 10 and 2, my knuckles white, not from the effort of driving, but from the effort of holding myself together. The adrenaline that had carried me up those stairs, that had fueled my voice and steadied my hand as I tore a $500,000 check in 2, was beginning to fade. In its place, a heavy, aching silence settled over the car. I turned off the radio. I didn't want music. I didn't want noise. I wanted to hear the hum of the engine and the beat of my own heart, assuring me that I had done the right thing. But had I? That is the question that haunts every mother when she practices tough love. We are wired to protect, to cushion the fall, to smooth the road. Tonight, I had taken a jackhammer to the road and watched my son fall into the ravine. I pulled into the driveway of my row house in Astoria just after midnight. The neighborhood was quiet, the streetlights reflecting off the damp pavement. My house looked exactly as I had left it, modest, brick, sturdy. The hydrangeas in the front yard were blooming. The porch light was on, a beacon I had left for myself. It wasn't a mansion in the Hudson Valley. There were no silk drapes or crystal chandeliers, but it was paid for. It was honest. I walked inside, kicked off my sensible heels, and sat on the sofa in the dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there, clutching my purse, waiting. I knew the phone would ring. I knew he would come. Or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe I'd lost him forever. Maybe the shame would be too great, and he would run in the opposite direction, chasing the ghost of the life he thought he wanted. At 2:01 a.m., my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Daniel. I picked it up. My thumb hovered over the green button. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for screaming, for accusations, for the "how could you" speech. Hello? Mom? His voice was small, broken. It sounded like the voice of the 6-year-old boy who had called me from the nurse's office after breaking his arm on the playground. I'm here, Daniel. Can I come home? Do you have a home? I asked gently. A long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, the wind rushing past an open window. No, he whispered. Isabella kicked me out of the car. Her dad told me if I came near their hotel, he'd call the cops. The landlord for our apartment, the one you were paying for, he changed the codes an hour ago. Victoria called him. Come home, I said. He arrived 40 minutes later. He didn't have a suitcase. He didn't have his tuxedo jacket. He was wearing his white dress shirt, stained with sweat and what looked like red wine, the sleeves rolled up, his tie missing. He stood on the porch, shivering in the cool night air, looking like a ghost. I opened the door. He didn't say a word. He just stepped inside and collapsed into my arms. He was a grown man, taller than me by a foot, heavy with muscle and the weight of his failures, but he crumpled like paper. He sobbed into my shoulder, big, heaving, ugly sobs that shook his entire frame. I held him. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't say, I warned you. I just stroked his hair, smelling the expensive cologne that was fading into the scent of sweat and regret, and let him cry. We sat in the kitchen. I made tea, the same kitchen where I had tested recipes for 40 years, the same table where Daniel had done his homework. She left me, Daniel said, staring into his mug. Before we even left the venue, she screamed at me in the parking lot. She said I was a fraud. She said I wasted her time. She was projecting, I said quietly. Richard, her dad? He tried to fight Leo, Daniel continued, a dry, hysterical laugh bubbling up. Leo, the photographer. Richard tried to grab his camera to delete the photos. Leo threatened to knock him out with his telephoto lens. It was chaos, Mom. And the check? I asked. The pieces are on the floor of the ballroom, Daniel said. Isabella tried to tape them back together. She was on her hands and knees, Mom, in her wedding dress, trying to tape the check. He looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. She didn't care about me at all, did she? She cared about what you could give her, I said. And when the tap ran dry, so did the affection. I knew, he whispered. Deep down, I think I knew. But I wanted it to be real so bad. I wanted to be the guy who could afford the Hamptons and the vintage cars. I wanted to be enough. You were always enough, Daniel, I said firmly. You were enough when you were working at the bakery in high school. You were enough when you got your degree. The money didn't add anything to you, it just covered you up. He took a sip of tea. So, 45 million? Yes. And you really won't give me any of it? I looked him in the eye. This was the test, the final exam. Not a penny, I said. You have a roof over your head tonight. You have tea. You have a mother who loves you. But you are 30 years old, Daniel. You have debts. You have a lease you can't afford. You have a mess. And you're going to clean it up. How? He asked, his voice trembling. I have nothing. No job. No savings. I was using your allowance to pay the minimums on 3 credit cards. Then you start from scratch, I said. Tomorrow morning you wake up, you put on work clothes, and you go find a job. Not a developer job, not a consultant job, a job that pays a wage for work done. I don't even know how to do anything real anymore, he admitted. I've spent 5 years pretending to be important. Then you learn, I said. You remember the bakery? You remember how to work? He nodded slowly. Good. Because life is a lot like dough, Daniel. You have to pound it, stretch it, and let it rise before it becomes anything worth eating. You've been trying to eat the flour raw. The next morning, Daniel didn't sleep in. He woke up at 6:01 a.m. He borrowed a pair of old jeans from his high school days that were tight in the waist and a t-shirt. He drank coffee, ate a piece of toast, my bread, of course, and walked out the door. He didn't come back with a job that day, or the next. The reality of his resume, a string of inflated titles and vague consulting roles, didn't impress the local businesses in Queens. They saw a soft man in fancy shoes who looked like a flight risk. But Daniel kept going. He had to. I had canceled the credit cards connected to my account. I had stopped the wire transfers. The luxury apartment in Manhattan sent a demand letter, then an eviction notice. He let it go. He let the leased BMW get repossessed from my driveway. It was humiliating. The neighbors watched as the tow truck dragged the shiny black car away. Daniel stood on the porch and watched it go. "That hurts," he said. "It's just metal," I told him. "You can't drive dignity." 3 weeks later, he came home with a uniform. It wasn't a suit. It was a green apron. "Starbucks," he said, holding it up. "Shift supervisor. It pays $20 an hour, plus tips." "It's a start," I said. "Isabella would die if she saw me," he muttered. "Isabella is likely looking for her next victim," I said. "You worry about the coffee." The months that followed were hard. Daniel came home smelling of roasted beans and stale milk. His feet hurt. He complained about rude customers, the irony of which was not lost on him. He dealt with entitled women who screamed about their foam ratios, and every time he told me, he saw a little bit of Isabella in them. He learned patience. He learned humility. He also learned about the Sterlings. The gossip columns had a field day. "Society wedding implodes," the headlines read. "Groom's mother cuts off gravy train." It turned out Richard Sterling had been running a Ponzi scheme of his own, borrowing from one lender to pay another. When my check didn't arrive to plug the hole, the dam burst. They lost the estate in Greenwich. Victoria was sued by 3 different charities for embezzlement. Isabella was spotted in Miami, hanging off the arm of a 70-year-old plastic surgeon. She had found her lifeboat. Daniel read the news on his phone at the kitchen table. He didn't laugh. He just shook his head. "I almost married that life," he said. "I almost became that." "But you didn't," I reminded him. One evening in November, 6 months after the wedding, Daniel came home with a box. It wasn't a vendor meal. It was a white bakery box from a local Italian place. "Cannoli," he said. "I paid for them. With my tips." We sat and ate. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking. The bakery business, the way you ran it, it wasn't just about the bread, was it? It was about the systems. The logistics." "It was about efficiency," I agreed. "I noticed at the coffee shop," he said. "The supply chain is a mess. The waste is huge. I wrote up a proposal for the district manager. Just some ideas on how to streamline the inventory." I looked at him. His eyes were bright. Not with the manic energy of a scammer trying to close a deal, but with the steady focus of a problem solver. "Did they read it?" "They did," he smiled. "They want me to come to corporate next week, junior operations analyst. It's an entry-level desk job, but it's real. It's a career." "That sounds wonderful, Daniel." "It pays $45,000 a year," he said. "I know well, it's not 45 million. "It's honest money," I said. "And it's yours." Epilogue. 1 year later. The Amalfi Coast is beautiful in September. The light hits the water in a way that makes the whole world look like it's been dipped in gold. I sat on the terrace of a small villa, a glass of limoncello in my hand, looking out at the Mediterranean. I wasn't staying in a hostel. I wasn't watching my budget. I had rented the villa for the month. I had hired a private chef to cook dinner, though I still liked to go into the kitchen and show him how to properly knead the focaccia. Old habits die hard. My phone rang. It was a video call. "Ciao, Mama." Daniel's face filled the screen. He looked different. He had cut his hair shorter. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo or a green apron. He was wearing a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, sitting in a cubicle that looked cluttered and busy. "Ciao, Daniel. Are you eating?" "Turkey sandwich," he laughed, holding it up. "Homemade." "Cheaper than buying lunch." "Good boy. How is work?" "Crazy. We're opening 10 new locations in the Midwest. I'm heading up the logistics team for the rollout. It's a lot of spreadsheets, Mom. But I like it. I'm good at it." "I know you are." "Hey, I sent you a check," he said. "A check?" $500. It's the first installment. Paying you back for the credit card debt you cleared for me last year. I know it's not much, but I want to pay it all back. With interest. I felt a lump in my throat. I looked at the view, the lemons hanging from the trees, the blue sea. I had $45 million in the bank. I didn't need his $500, but he needed to send it. Thank you, Daniel, I said. I'll deposit it. I met someone, he added, his voice dropping a little. Her name is Sarah. She's a nurse. We met at the dog park. She drives a 2012 Toyota, and she hates fancy restaurants. I smiled. A real, deep smile that started in my chest. She sounds perfect, I said. Bring her to Sunday dinner when I get back. I'll make the lasagna. She'd love that. She's terrified of meeting you, though. I told her the story. The story? The toast, he said. The legend of Table 32. She thinks you're a mob boss or something. I laughed. Tell her I'm just a baker who knows how to spot a bad egg. I love you, Mom, Daniel said. And thank you for cutting me off, for ripping up the check. It was the best gift you ever gave me. I love you too, Daniel. Now get back to work. I hung up the phone. I took a sip of my limoncello. I thought about Victoria Sterling, currently awaiting trial. I thought about Isabella, clawing her way through Miami. And I thought about my son, eating a turkey sandwich in a cubicle, building a life that actually belonged to him. I looked down at my hands. They were wrinkled now, the knuckles a little swollen, but they were strong. They had built an empire, they had destroyed a fantasy, and in the wreckage they had helped build a man. The view from the villa was spectacular, but the view from Table 32, that was the one that saved us.